All right, we're playing bass, just hanging out, playing some P-bass grooves. And today I'm here to tell you a little bit about the difference between having a P-bass with flatwound strings and a P-bass with roundwound strings. Now this is a question that I get all the time from different students and things. What kind of strings do I have on my bass? What should they be? What do I want? What do you have? And hopefully this will kind of like go through the different types of sounds that we can get in the different capabilities of having a P-bass with roundwound strings versus a P-bass with flats. The good news is I have both and I'm here to tell you about them. So right now I am just playing my P-bass with roundwound strings. This is one of my favorite basses. It is a Mike Lull P-bass. Whether you have a Fender or this kind of P-bass or that kind of P-bass, it's all good. You know, we've got this P pickup where you have a volume knob and a tone knob, so really simple in terms of like our tone shaping capabilities on the bass. We either have the ability to have our tone all the way up, all the way down, or somewhere in the middle. It's just P-bass. It's got one knob for that and one volume knob. What could be better? I don't know. But this particular instrument is going to have roundwound strings. I like the D'Addario Nichols. You can get whatever you want, but a roundwound string is roundwound string. A flatwound string is a flatwound string, and we will talk about both of them. But with this P-bass with roundwounds, one of the cool things about it is the roundwound string has a brighter sound to it. It kind of digs in and has just like a different tonal quality. So there's also a lot of flexibility between the, what I call like the tone spectrum, how bright it is versus how dull and muted it sounds. So right now with my tone all the way up, we've got a nice punchy tone. Roundwound strings, you can kind of hear, has some bite to it. It also will have a lot of different like resonance and a little more finger noise. So you might get this kind of sound happening if you find yourself being really close to the strings. So from a technique standpoint, I love doing technical exercises on a bass with roundwound strings because I think that they're a little bit more transparent, meaning I can hear more of the flaws, more of the inconsistencies sometimes. And for me, that has become a benefit in terms of me trying to practice my technique and make sure that I really do sound good on my instrument. So the roundwound strings will bring out a little bit more of that finger noise, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's going to cut through a little bit more. You can play it with fingerstyle, you can play it with a pick, you can go a little slappy slap, whatever you want to do. But I love going fingerstyle with a bass like this. You can definitely hear the tones on the higher strings, so the D and the G string. Kind of like bounce out a little bit more. It's really nice. Slides sound great. It's just like a really nice crisp tone. Now, if I wanted to roll my tone all the way down, meaning we're now in like the dark, muddy nether regions of bass tone, it's going to sound like this. Also sounds great. Sounds like a P-bass. I love it. But it's a lot more subdued. You're not going to hear as much of the high end. You're not going to hear as much of the string noise. But there is a really nice kind of like diversity in terms of the tonal spectrum here. You can always find your sweet spot in the middle if you'd like, and kind of like play a different groove. Move the tone knob a little bit. As I go closer to like having my tone knob all the way open, you're going to hear the bass line will brighten up a little bit. I'm going to get a little more finger noise. Let's adjust it again. Now we're starting to hear this sneak out a little bit. We're getting that fretboard bite, and here it is all the way up. Oh yeah. So we have a really nice range of tone that we can get here with our P bass with round wound strings. So I would say some of the positives of round wounds are we have a really great brightness going on. It is a little bit more transparent in terms of the noise that we generate. So that, again, that can be a good thing as you practice technique to kind of hear the inconsistencies and try to improve upon that. And we have a really, really broad range of tone that we can get from our tone being all the way down versus all the way up. Let's explore the P bass with flats. Give me just a second to switch, and we'll be right back with the P bass with flats. All right, we have returned now with a P bass with flatwound strings, and this instrument is very similar to the other one. It is also a mic wall P bass. Couple differences, just we've got like a little D tuner on here in case I want to go extra low on a 4-string, but frankly I keep it in standard most of the time. But the biggest difference here is that this is now a P bass with flat wound strings. So when we switch between the two, you know, there's a little bit of a difference in terms of the tone that we get, actually quite a bit of difference. But a lot of people will say like, oh, a P bass with rounds is great for rock and a P bass with flats is great for soul and R&B, and really I think that you can be pretty versatile with both of them. I love the P bass with flats. It's got a different type of attack. So with my tone all the way up, you're just going to hear that the sound of the note is quite different. You know, you're still going to hear some like of the attack as you press down on the fretboard. You're going to get some nice tone from your fingers. But one thing you won't get quite as much of is the noise. So even if I go and move my hand around this way, you're really not going to get a lot of the scratchiness that you might get with round wound strings. So flats can be slightly more forgiving in that sense. You can do some great slides and moves like that on here. And I think it is a little bit more even going from your thicker strings, your E and A, over to your thinner strings, the D and the G string. They're all going to kind of speak really nice and even if your bass is set up well. So that's one of the cool things about playing a P bass with flats. Again, we have the spectrum of what our tone knob lets us do. As at the moment, my tone is all the way up. If I bring it all the way down, it's going to go into that like really dark, muddy sound. It almost sounds like we're underwater. We're missing some of those highs. In some ways that can be a benefit if you're doing anything that's really like dark and dubby sounding, anything that's kind of like reggae-y. Like that can be a really cool tone. But again, we have that spectrum of tone all the way down versus tone all the way up. We can hear that kind of dubby, muddy sound as the tone is all the way down. As we kind of bring our tone up, you know, if I play the same kind of groove as before, now we have some finger noise. So I think that one of the interesting things about a P bass is you really have that vast spectrum of tone down, tone up, how much sound you're going to get out of the attack of your fingers versus how dark or bright it's going to sound. So and the cool thing is that whether you have round wound strings or flat wound strings, you're going to have that diversity on both of the instruments. So I would say really it comes down to preference, the overall tone you get, and then realizing that so much of your tone really is in your fingers, in your hands, in the way you approach the strings. Again, flat wounds can be a little bit more forgiving in terms of the noise that we generate on them. But I would say that sometimes round wounds can speak a little bit better, especially if you're going to play solos or anything like that and you want to have a little bit more agility. I find that round wounds might lend themselves better to that. But really, it is a personal choice. You can kind of figure out how to use your hands and your instrument and your amp to get all different types of tones, and it really comes down to what you feel most comfortable on and what is most important for the gigs that you're going to be playing or the folks you're going to be practicing with, or just what you're going to be doing at home in your practice space. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you have the opportunity to experiment with round wounds versus flat wounds, go for it. I would say though that if you are going to switch back and forth, get your bass set up. You know, if you're going to go from having a bass with round wound strings and you're going to put flats on it, put the new strings on, give it a couple weeks, get it set up, and then make sure that the neck is adjusted appropriately because the tension will change a bit. So do the same thing vice versa if you're going from a bass with flats to a bass with rounds. Put new strings on, let it sit for a couple weeks and acclimate, and then do a setup. But either way, you can't really go wrong with a P bass with flats. It's a really versatile tone. Same with the P bass with rounds. It really comes down to preference. So I hope you found this video helpful and that you were able to hear some of the examples of the tonal spectrum of what both types of strings allow for. So happy practicing, everybody. Keep it groovy. Catch you next time.